The alien coalition had spent centuries perfecting their warships. Layered hulls of adaptive alloys, self-repairing nanoplates, and shimmering energy fields that could shrug off plasma cannons. To them, their fleet was untouchable, an impenetrable wall of power that had humbled a dozen species across the stars. When the Galactic Council warned that humanity had entered the conflict, they laughed. No species born on a single death world could threaten them, they said. The humans had only just joined the galactic stage. How could primitives challenge the Apex Armada? Their laughter stopped the moment the first human railgun round hit. It wasn't plasma, it wasn't exotic energy, it was pure, dense, kinetic death. The projectile tore through layered shields, through armor thicker than a city block, through the spinal core of a dreadnought that had cost 3 planetary economies to build. There was no flash, no explosion at first. Just a soundless ripple across sensors, followed by the ship's internal structure collapsing in on itself. The flagship Tyrannis Eternal was the first to die. Its crew barely had time to register the incoming velocity before the rail slug exited through the far side of the hull, glowing white-hot from friction and force. 1,000,000 tons of alloy turned molten in an instant. The bridge went silent. Their commander, Admiral XHYR, could only stare as his vessel's entire central deck vanished into vacuum. He didn't understand. The humans had fired one shot. Just one dot. When humanity had first encountered the Galactic Council, they'd been humble, cautious explorers seeking trade, cooperation, and peace. The Council had scoffed at their outdated weapons and primitive hulls. They mocked humans for still using projectiles in a galaxy that had long abandoned crude kinetics. They had no idea that the humans weren't backward, they were efficient. On Earth, evolution had favored pragmatism over pomp. Now that pragmatism was turning alien fleets into scrap. Human engineers didn't bother with shimmering shields. They poured their effort into mathematics, into rail accelerators capable of firing dense tungsten rods at a fraction of light speed. Every shot was a meteor from hell, every impact a small nuclear detonation of raw force. Alien ships began to adapt, or tried to. They layered their armor further, stacked ablative plating, added secondary shields tuned to kinetic disruption. The second engagement went worse than the first. Human warships appeared from hyperspace like silent predators, long and lean, matte black hulls glinting only in the reflected starlight. The first volley came from a dozen human destroyers. The aliens' new armor barely slowed the projectiles. It didn't matter how many layers they added, physics didn't negotiate. The slugs hit with the fury of mountains falling from orbit. Ships folded like paper, hulls bending inward under impossible stresses. Alien commanders screamed into their comms, ordering evasive maneuvers that did nothing against weapons that moved faster than thought. When the aliens tried to retaliate, their plasma bolts splashed harmlessly against human ships' electromagnetic sheaths. The humans had learned. Their armor didn't rely on brute material, it was dynamic, dispersing energy across its surface before it could burn through. But the true weapon wasn't their armor, it was their doctrine. Humans didn't fight wars the way the galaxy did. While the coalition fleets formed perfect battle lines, humanity fought like predators. They came from the dark, from dead space, from gravitational shadows. Their ships were silent until they fired, their signatures masked, their trajectories unpredictable. To the alien tacticians, it was chaos. To humans, it was art. Every engagement left the coalition reeling. They'd armor-plated every ship, reinforced every bulkhead, and still they were losing. Their greatest battleships, ships the size of cities, were being gutted by what the aliens began to call Earth spears. And when a human captain was asked how they built such weapons, his answer was terrifyingly simple: we just built a bigger gun. The third battle, over the twin suns of Vira Prime, sealed the coalition's fate. The human fleet didn't fire immediately. They waited. The aliens advanced, confident that this was a trap, confident that they had accounted for human cunning. But they had not accounted for human patience. When the human flagship Horizon Breaker finally opened fire, it did not use one railgun, it used 9, firing in synchronized succession. Each slug followed the path of the one before it, boring through the same molten wound in the enemy's flagship until the entire vessel detonated from within. The sight was so horrific that several alien crew surrendered without a single human boarding party. The Galactic Council convened in emergency session. They demanded to know how a young species from a single world had shattered fleets that had dominated for millennia. The human ambassador arrived late, as always, carrying a datapad filled with combat telemetry. He placed it on the council table and simply said, "You told us armor was invincible. We decided to test that theory." In private, the aliens whispered about Earth's death engineers. They began circulating reports of human weapons factories buried in asteroids, of experimental railguns capable of firing through moons. They thought it was propaganda, until one of their scout ships disappeared near Jupiter and was later found split in two, its halves drifting 1,000,000 kilometers apart. Eventually, the coalition sued for peace. Humanity accepted, conditionally. The terms were brutal but fair: no more subjugation of weaker species, no more monopolies on galactic trade, and recognition of Earth as a sovereign power. The aliens agreed, shaken to their core. In their eyes, humans were no longer a young race. They were a force of nature. Years later, alien historians would debate how the humans had won so decisively. Some said it was technology. Others said it was strategy. But the truth was simpler: humans had never believed in invincibility. They had spent their entire existence breaking the impossible, and as the stars burned on, whispers spread throughout the galaxy: the species from the Death World had rewritten the rules of war. Their weapons could pierce gods, their courage defied logic, and their message was clear: no armor lasts forever when humanity decides to break it. The galaxy watched in silence as human fleets patrolled the void, not as conquerors, but as the quiet reminder of an ancient truth, that even in the cold darkness of space, no wall, no shield, no armor could ever withstand the will of humankind. The aftermath of the war changed everything. The coalition that once ruled the stars now paid tribute to Earth, not through servitude, but through respect born of terror. Galactic maps were redrawn, treaties rewritten, and fleets reorganized. Every academy, every war college across the known sectors began teaching the human principle: no defense is absolute. It became doctrine, carved into the minds of every future admiral. But humanity didn't rest. They never did. While alien empires licked their wounds, humans looked outward again, toward the dark edges of the galaxy, where signals older than any known species whispered from the void. They didn't fear what lay ahead. They prepared for it. If the universe had stronger enemies waiting, humanity would simply build bigger railguns. The alien scientists who studied human technology called it inelegant, brutal, primitive genius. Their reports described machinery that rattled with vibration, that scorched its own hull during firing, and yet, it worked perfectly. Where the aliens sought perfection through stability, humanity achieved perfection through chaos, through adaptation, through sheer will. In the years that followed, rumors spread of a new human weapon, the God Spike. A railgun the length of a moon, anchored between twin orbital stations, designed to launch projectiles at 1/10 of light speed. The coalition dismissed it as a myth, until deep space sensors caught a signal, a pulse of gravitational distortion that shattered every scanner in range. No one ever saw the projectile. But they saw what it hit: an asteroid the size of a small continent, split clean in two. When questioned about the weapon, Earth's Fleet Command gave a chilling reply: "We're not arming for war. We're preparing for visitors." The Council didn't know what that meant, but they didn't ask again. Trade between species slowly resumed. Humanity became both feared and admired. Their warships patrolled not as aggressors but as peacekeepers. When pirate fleets attacked outer colonies, they vanished without a trace. Some claimed they were vaporized, others said the humans gave them a chance to surrender. None could confirm which version was true. Despite their reputation, humans were not cruel. They offered aid where others offered threats, rebuilt worlds shattered by ancient wars, and shared technology carefully. They taught the galaxy the value of simplicity, of reliability. Their philosophy was clear: you don't need to make something beautiful, you need to make it work. Yet even as peace spread, so did unease. Alien governments began to fear not humanity's weapons, but their minds. In a single generation, humans had surpassed thousands of years of galactic science. Their engineers turned impossible theories into working prototypes. Their soldiers, once considered primitive, now trained side by side with alien elites, teaching them the art of kinetic precision. On the anniversary of the war's end, Admiral HFY, the alien who had once commanded the doomed Tyrannies Eternal, visited Earth under a white flag. He was greeted warmly, shown the railgun that had destroyed his ship, and offered a drink by the human officer who'd fired it. When asked how he felt, the Admiral smiled faintly and said, "I came expecting monsters. I found men." But deep within Earth's military command, a new concern was rising. Humanity had learned something unsettling during their war, that the galaxy's materials, even its densest alloys, couldn't withstand infinite acceleration. There was a physical limit to everything. That realization sparked a new kind of research, one that aimed to break that limit entirely. They called it Project Singularity. Its goal, to create a railgun that didn't just launch matter, but space itself. A weapon that would fold gravity into a linear path and fire a rip in reality like a spear. It was theoretical, absurd, and dangerously unstable, exactly the kind of challenge humanity loved. When alien scientists heard rumors of the project, panic rippled through the council again. "Why do you keep building weapons?" they asked. The human ambassador only smiled. "Because peace is fragile," he said. "And we'd rather armor it with steel than with hope." Still, the railgun fleets remained silent for decades. Humanity focused on exploration, not conquest. They established colonies in uncharted systems, reached the galactic rim, and found remnants of civilizations far older than the Council itself. One artifact they uncovered bore a message, written in a language no one could fully translate, except the humans. It read, "The stars will test you. Only those who can break through themselves will survive." It was a warning and an invitation. Humanity accepted both. When the next darkness came, it wasn't an empire or an army. It was something beyond even the Council's understanding, a cosmic storm devouring systems, erasing worlds. Alien fleets fled. Humanity advanced. They anchored their railguns to dying suns and turned collapsing stars into power sources. And once again, they fired. Those who witnessed it said the void itself screamed. The rail slugs weren't visible, only the aftershock, a distortion that bent starlight and left nothing but silence where the storm had been. When the sensors cleared, the threat was gone. So was half the human fleet. The galaxy mourned. For the first time, aliens wept for humans, not because they feared them, but because they understood them. The species that had built weapons to defy gods had used them to save everyone else, and from that day on, no one laughed at human railguns, or their crude designs, or their reckless courage. They were no longer just warriors or engineers. They were guardians of the void, proof that even the cold, infinite dark could be challenged, so long as humanity stood behind the trigger. As the centuries passed, one phrase became a galactic proverb, engraved in every academy and whispered in every fleet. They armor-plated their ships, but humanity punched through. And in that truth, the galaxy found its greatest comfort and its greatest fear.